What's going on, everyone? So, is short-term rental going to mess up the housing market and cause a crash? Now, in my belief, it's gonna be a no, but comment down below, like and subscribe to my videos if you think the Airbnb market is gonna cause a housing market crash.
During the Super Bowl in Phoenix, a lot of these Airbnb owners didn't get anywhere near the rent and payments that they wanted and were counting on. So that's going to bring some supply to their market.
Now, before I get into short-term rentals, let me tell you what I think about the housing market. I believe there is going to be a crash, but it's only going to be for a few reasons. It's number one, it's because there's oversupply of houses on the market. If you see the charts and everything from Zillow, they actually have a decrease in home value prices and double the inventory already, and that's without counting the Airbnb and short-term market houses hitting the market. And
The short term rental market is on the verge of total collapse. What happens next will send shockwaves through the entire housing market. Over 2 million Airbnb and VRBO properties are about to flood the housing market simultaneously.
the other reason why I think there's gonna be a housing market crash is because we have high interest rates still. Now, the final reason why I think we're gonna have a housing market crash is because the high unemployment rate.
What could crash the UK housing market? Unemployment and interest rates. If rates stay high and people struggle to pay mortgages, forced sales could bring prices down.
Or the best way I can put it, the high amount of people that are getting fired from their job or laid off. So you have people getting laid off by the thousands, some 100,000, counting on the areas we in. So you have high amount of people getting fired, high interest rate, and double amount of inventory. And those are all signs, in my belief, that it's gonna have a low demand of buyers in these areas. So it's just gonna cause a correction or not as many people wanting to buy a house. So that's my belief in the housing market. Now let's really talk about what we want to talk about in this video today, and it is the reason why Airbnb is partly fault of this housing market crash. Now, yes, it's partly involved, but it's not the main reason why we're having a crash. And it's number one, the industry is growing at a faster pace than the local government can keep up. So a lot of people kept buying these Airbnbs, taking it up, and it caused a major disruption in the Airbnb market. So it caused a short supply. Now we're gonna have an oversupply. So that's one of the reasons why we have an issue. We already have an oversupply, but it's not gonna cause a crash. But these people are gonna want to get out of the house, and if they're trying to sell it, so they're gonna cause housing prices to dip a little bit just to get these loans out of the way, so they don't have to pay anymore. They rather not take a loss. But hey, some people want to take a loss, and it's gonna cause the housing part price to drop in some of these areas. Now, number two, Airbnb is limited the number of rental units that can be available because a lot of people pulled out of rental units. Now it's going to cause a renter issue. What do I mean by this rental issue? You can have a bunch of Airbnbs going into the long-term rental market, and they're going to be wanting to put it on long-term lease and get it on there quickly. So people are shifting. I shifted my Airbnb early because I saw that it's just not going to be sustainable. And there's a lot of reasons why it's not going to be sustainable, and we'll go later in the video. But let's go over why people are going to switch. Because if they switch now, the rental market is still pretty good, and they'd be able to at least break even or have a slight loss. Some people might be able to make a profit still. I was able to make a profit on one of my properties, but the other one, I kind of broke even after you count the expenses and everything. So number two reason why it messed up the market, right? Now, number three, restriction may not work on some of these Airbnbs, and that's just the clear answer. We don't know what people are doing, what restriction they're putting out, and those are the three ways I see that it messed up the housing market. And this is the housing market in general and not due to these crash. Now, if we go into the fourth reason, is there's no clear picture of what Airbnb is going to be doing in the future and what's going to be re-innovating. So we don't know what the short-term rental market's really going to do in the future, because at the end of the day, it's still one of the short. It's new to investing comparatively to the other things. Now there's still vacation rentals and everything else like that, but we just don't know, and it's too undefined. So with all this disruption to the market, for the housing market, it caused little issues there. Now let's go into the issues with the short-term rental and some of the things that are causing it to have issues. Now let's go to these contributing factors why short-term rentals are not feasible no more. So this is the main topic of the video: why short-term rentals aren't working. Now, I used to have 2-3 Airbnbs, and they were working great for the first year, and the second year they're doing okay. And with all these videos of people going on, they made this $1 million company doing short term.
What if I told you that you could become a millionaire from Airbnb? Would you believe me? My name is Anaya. I'm a 22-year-old 7-figure Airbnb host, and in just 3 years, I went from one property to building a portfolio of over 50 rental properties, making nearly
term rentals. Airbnb's doing so good. Airbnb this, Airbnb that, VRBO. We had all these great news about it, but there's so much issues about Airbnb now. And the first issue with short-term rental was oversaturated market. Almost everyone was getting into it, and it oversaturated the market with short-term rental. When I first put my house on the market for Airbnb and short-term rental, I was the only person in the neighborhood, so it was booked consistently. By the end of me taking that listing down, there was 5 in my neighborhood, and it was all on the same street. So guess what? It was oversaturated, especially whenever I looked at the numbers for me, and I was like, oh my God, there's 5 in my neighborhood, and it happened within 2 years. So it got oversaturated really quick. Now, with the oversaturation, it came into the second factor that gave me major issues. It was occupancy rate plummeted. I used to be booked out every day, and they'll stay for a week, they'll stay for 3 days, and I was able to turn it over and stay almost all month, all year. For the first year, it was booked almost every single day. The second year, it dropped to like 60%, which it was still making me money. But once I got to that third year, or close to that third year, it dropped to 25%, 30%, just due to the oversaturation. And people were gouging these prices down. So I didn't see the point of only making $100, $200 a month for all this work for Airbnb short-term rental. Now, if I was making $1,000 extra a month from a short-term rental, it would have been worth it. But at the end of the day, when I left, I was making only $200, $300 a month. And this was me keeping the cleaning fee and me cleaning the house. Now, the other issue I had was the skyrocket property insurance that was happening in my area. So in 1 year, my property insurance went almost up 20-30% for some of my houses. So I couldn't afford to pay that 20-30% and do my Airbnb, because the insurance company was charging me more for short-term rental. Yes, they're charging me more. So I couldn't afford to pay that and have a short-term rental. So that's another reason why I had to get out. Now, the other issue I came out was operating costs nearly doubled since I did. When I first started my Airbnb, to get a cleaner used to be $40. They'll come in, clean, they'll be done within an hour. By the end of it, they are coming in and wanting minimum $200 to $300 for a cleaning of my Airbnb. And that just doesn't make sense, because I was only collecting $50 to clean the whole house. And yes, towards the end, Airbnb was being very strict. They started dropping the charge you can do on Airbnb on the cleaning because people were overcharging on cleaning for all these random things, charging for pillowcases, charging for this, and it wasn't worth it. At the end of the day, I was losing more money than some nights to rent out my place than it would just long term. And what I mean by that, I could rent out the place for 3 days for $300 to $75 cleaning. If my cleaner comes in, they'll charge me $300 or $300 to clean the whole house. Mop, clean, take out trash, everything. Well, if I'm only charging $65 for cleaning, and I got charged and I made $300, I pretty much only made like $60. It made no sense because I will still have to pay the electric. I still have to pay the water bill. I still have to pay all these things for the operated. That with the operating cost being double now, I just can't afford it. So why would I want to operate my Airbnb in a negative? And that's what was happening to my Airbnb. It was slowly slipping to the negative due to the operation cost. People with the electric bill goes up, water bills were going up, and the insurance going up means my monthly expense was going up every month. With the cleaning fee and the yard service, it made no more sense. I was losing money. So that's the other reason why Airbnb and short-term rentals are doing bad. Now, the other thing I started seeing issues with was HOAs, government, and the city started putting regulations on short-term rentals. And I see this now that people are getting HOA fines for running short-term rentals. Not just local government officials that are starting to charge, it's also HOA. So you have people charging for these short-term rentals, and it made no sense. I didn't want to keep in the short-term market whenever you have regulation and limitations that are being put onto you by random entities. HOA, the government, the city, they are hating on short-term rentals, and they started getting rid of it. And lastly, and I talked about this before, was the razor thin margins. There was no point of me running an Airbnb if some months were a negative and other months were barely making $200 or $300. So when I did the math, after my second year of doing Airbnb, I was breaking even. And I can't even say what the third year was gonna be like because the first year I made $15,000 off my Airbnb, my first one, and the second one was making me another $15,000. So I made $30,000 on my Airbnb, minus operating expense and everything like that. I made roughly about $25,000 for 2 Airbnb, which was great amount of money. But on that second year, I broke even with all my properties, and that was horrible. From making $25,000 from the first year doing Airbnb to breaking even the next year, and this year when I did it or was in the middle of it, I would have been in a negative. I'll probably been in a negative about $10,000 if I kept the Airbnb, and it made no sense to keep it. So those are the reasons why Airbnbs are dying and short-term rentals are gone. It's not gonna cause a housing market crash, but it will give us some more supply of houses. But Airbnb is not the reason why the housing market is crashing. Like, subscribe to my video, and that's my video on short-term rentals.